Hello and welcome to LGBTQ Northwest Indiana and PFLAG Crown Point TV, episode number 11.
We come to you every 2 weeks on Thursday at 8 p.m.
Our producer is The Bill and Callie Show, and my name is Amari Victoria. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the executive producer of LGBTQ Northwest Indiana.
I was going to jump in there in the middle, I'm sorry. My name's Elizabeth Menning. I am the president of PFLAG Crown Point, and I also go by the pronouns she, her, hers.
Today, we have Becca Emerson, Direct Services Coordinator of Fairhaven Rape Crisis Center, who we will be talking to a little later in the show.
Say hi, Becca.
Hi, everyone.
All right, so we bring you topics and news important to LGBTQ and ally community members here in Northwest Indiana. Whether you identify as LGBTQ, which is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, any of that yourself, or if you're supporting somebody who is, or if you just want to learn more and be a good ally, protector, advocate, this show is for you.
The summary of our show today will be a little bit about Vote 2020, a little bit about the Indiana Quit Line, and also the 2020 census.
And then we'll jump into our feature topic, which is the Fairhaven Rape Crisis Center and how it is affirming and welcoming for LGBTQ people.
If we have time, after our wonderful interview with Becca, we will do a couple of news items, and I'll tell you a little bit about Bi Week and Celebrate Bisexuality Day.
All right. All right, so for voting, very, very important. We all know this election is an important election. As you know, Election Day is November 3rd, 2020. There are 3 ways that you can vote. You can, if you meet the criteria, you can get an absentee ballot by mail if you can't go in person. Otherwise, you are expected to go in person, and you can either do that on November 3rd, or you can do early voting, which is October 6th through November 2nd. And that does, the hours and days do vary a little bit by where you live, so make sure you check. There are some really good resources out there. So Rise NWI and the League of Women Voters of Calumet, of Porter County, and of LaPorte County are all wonderful resources for learning more about voting. PFLAG National has a great wealth of information on their website. All of it is nonpartisan, all these organizations I've been talking about. We just want to make sure that you get out and vote. First step is registering, and your deadline to register is October 5th. That's a Monday. The deadline to request a ballot by mail is October 22nd. But we do recommend whatever you do, do it early. If you're going to go through the mail, just give yourself enough time for things to get where they need to go. And anything else to add to the voting?
Yes, as a matter of fact, on my organization's website at lgbtq-nwi.org, on my links page, I have included, for convenience, some links that go to the in-person voting locations for 5 counties in Northwest Indiana, early voting locations, or information I should say, for Lake County, Indiana, as well as some independent websites which serve to give you more information about the candidates.
All right, and there is just so much information out there. Make sure you go to a reputable website. You can always check with your county clerk's office to find your locations and hours for early voting. So, Amari, do you have a plan for voting?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, as soon as October 6th rolls around, my plan is to make my way to my early voting site and cast my vote.
So you are registered then?
I am registered, and I did check my registration as recently as this past week.
Yes. even though you do get registered to vote, we recommend that you check from time to time and just make sure that it's still good. What about you, Becca?
I actually just got a new place to go vote. So yeah, I am registered. I checked it. I got my little thing in the mail the other day that said that we are all good to go. And I checked it then because I'm crazy and make sure and double check things. So I double checked it on the website and I am good to go. And I plan to go in person on the day.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent. Well, I am going to do what Amari does. I'm registered to vote, and I too am going to make use of the early voting window.
I would like to just let everyone know that if you are interested in stopping smoking or the use of tobacco, Indiana has a quit line that you can go to. If you do a Google search, you can find their website, as well as a 800 number, which is 1-800-QUIT-NOW.
It's pretty easy to remember.
Yes, it is.
And again, we always bring this up every episode because the stresses involved if you aren't accepted or welcomed, or if you're harassed by being LGBTQ, it can drive people to substance abuse, which includes the smoking and vaping. So we always like to mention that 1-800-QUIT-NOW.
And this is a personal topic to both of our organizations. And we promote smoking cessation in all of our events and meetings, and of course, this TV show.
Yes. So the third little tidbit that we always give you is the census. And they're going to end field data collection on September 30th. So you still have a few days to get in. Go to 2020census.gov and you can self-report. It's really important to be counted in the census, even though they don't have a lot of LGBTQ specific questions. We need to be counted as residents because that's where federal dollars for our communities come from. Very, very important. Anything else to add on the census? We know we've talked about it.
Again, on my organization's website, on the main page, there is a link both to the main 2020 census site, as well as a link that would take you directly to the census interview. So it just makes it a little easier to get there.
I said census interview. I mean the census paperwork, or?
Yeah, it's the survey that the
Okay.
census takes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
I would like to also mention briefly that this is Suicide Prevention Month. I'm going to read you a little something from a foundation called the Jason Foundation, which is dedicated to the prevention of suicide in youth. September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. National Suicide Prevention Week is September 6th to 12th, 2020, with World Suicide Prevention Day being on the 10th. During this week, month, and day, individuals and organizations alike will be drawing attention to the problems of suicide and advocating for the prevention of this terrible tragedy. Suicide is a national health problem that currently ranks as the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24. Suicide is also one of the leading causes of preventable death in our nation. There is also a lot of information on a website that I unfortunately don't have in front of me concerning statistics on suicide. And unfortunately for the LGBTQ community, they are excessively different than for non-LGBTQ people.
And especially during this time of the stay at home and the social distancing and work from home, it's especially challenging for many. And I just read something in our neighborhood application that somebody's best friend did commit suicide, and he usually reached out, but he didn't this time. And I just found that, I mean, it's obviously heartbreaking, but the comments on that message, people were saying, hey, I checked in on this neighbor and they were so appreciative. And I checked in with this person. And, if there's anybody you haven't heard from or you think might be at risk, or even if you don't think they might be at risk, just reach out. just a text or a, hey, I'm thinking of you, or anything could be so important.
It really does make a difference. Just reach out. You don't know whose life you might save.
And Bill, if you want to show that rainbow colored sheet at this point, that would be good.
Okay.
All right. All right. So we would like to welcome Becca Emerson, Direct Services Coordinator at Fairhaven Rape Crisis Center. And we are so happy you are here joining us. We can't wait to talk with you here and find out what you guys do.
I'm so happy to be here, and I thank you for giving us this platform. It's much appreciated.
No problem.
Okay.
All right. Could you tell us a little bit first about yourself, and then maybe, well, not maybe, definitely about Fairhaven?
Absolutely. So my name is Becca Emerson. Like you said, I do run the Direct Services Department here at Fairhaven. Fairhaven is Lake County's Rape Crisis Center, and we service clients all over Northwest Indiana. We are the only standalone rape crisis center in our state, which means that we are very specific on services for survivors of sexual violence in our community. So a little bit about myself. I started off here as a volunteer back in 2015, right at the beginning of our launch of the 24-hour rape crisis response team. I was a volunteer every other Sunday from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. for about a year. And then I was offered a position here, which I started off and kind of dabbled in all of the different things that we could possibly do here, between community outreach and obviously responding to hospitals and working with survivors as well. And I've been kind of doing it ever since, and I haven't stopped. So that's a little bit about me. Like I said, Fairhaven is our standalone rape crisis center, and it services survivors in our community. We do that a couple different ways, which we'll get into throughout the interview. And like I said, I'm really happy to be here.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the standalone center versus a non-standalone center?
Absolutely. So in our state, we have a lot of what's called a dual service center, which means that the agencies work with survivors of sexual violence. A lot of them do have the 24-hour rape response team as well. But they also work with survivors of other types of violence, whether a lot of them are domestic violence shelters as well. So these dual service agencies will provide shelter for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, along with running the 24-hour rape response team. At Fairhaven, we are a standalone, which means that we only service survivors of sexual violence, and that we don't have a shelter to put them in, unfortunately. Not to say that one day we might not have a safe house, but that's where our community partnership with our domestic violence shelters comes in real handy when we need a safe place to put a survivor.
Great. And from what we understand from having talked with you, it's any people that are survivors of sexual assault.
Absolutely.
Males, females, LGBTQ.
Yes. So we work with any survivor at any walk of life, no matter what their background is, no matter where they're at in their life. And I'm not just saying this to be a cliche. I work with some of the most non-judgmental women in the entire world. I could, and I wouldn't, but I could come in here and confess the worst thing I've ever done, and they'd just kind of sit down and be like, okay, so let's talk about this and talk about your options. And I say that as a joke, but the reality is I have worked with survivors in all walks of life. And, well, I shot up heroin last night, and it's like, okay, well, we can work through that. What do we got to do to get you connected to a resource in which we're going to be able to help you find recovery, both from this horrible, terrible thing that happened and from your addiction. Mm-hmm. So while we may not be able to work directly with the addiction point of their recovery, I can get them connected to someone in our community that is better fitted for that specific need. So every step of life, every walk of life, no matter where your background is, no matter where you're at, any age, we'll work with you. We are very limited on the young ones that we can work with, just because I feel like in that moment, they're a little bit outside of our scope, but we do have a lot of referrals that we're able to give to our young kiddos, unfortunately, who are going through this as well.
I would imagine then that you have a fairly robust collection or database of those services that you can refer these folks to.
Absolutely. My assistant coordinator, Sylvia, has a huge binder of resources. And it's so funny because if I'm working with a survivor and I have a pretty good idea of resources in our community, but every once in a while it's like, I don't know what to do with this. I go to my team and I say, okay, everybody, everyone has a different set of resources in their brain. This is what I need. Let's find it. And 100% of the time, my team is able to find something.
Have you formed partnerships with any of those organizations?
Absolutely. We have partnerships located all over Northwest Indiana. I think our strongest, of course, would be with our law enforcement agency and our prosecutor's office, our hospitals. Those are the allied professionals that we work with on a day-to-day basis and are in constant communication with. But as for other agency-related resources for very specific issues that people may be going through, we partner very heavily with our domestic violence shelters, with our substance abuse programs located in our community. So we do absolutely have a lot of different partnerships in our community. Our closest partnerships come from our allied professionals who we work with on a day-to-day basis in our hospitals, our law enforcement, our prosecutor's office, just because we do work with them almost every single day working with our survivors. We do have the partnerships with our domestic violence shelters, especially given that we can't provide someone with shelter. We're always leaning on them and love building those partnerships. And we continue to build partnerships with every single agency who will be willing to have us at the table and sit down and have a conversation. So if you're out there and you're listening, and you want to have a partnership, let us know. We would love to sit down and talk about how we can best support our survivors in our community.
That's great.
That is a wonderful request. I do have the question. It sounds like you're, based on your partnerships, that you probably do more than just refer someone to those people.
Mm-hmm. We do. A lot of the times just making the phone call is really difficult. And so, we work very hard to empower every single survivor that comes in. So it's a very thin line of, here, just hand me the phone and I'll make the call for you, which is something that we don't do. But we will sit down next to them and go over, okay, so we're calling a domestic violence shelter. Here's what to expect. Here are some of the questions they're going to ask you. And I'm going to sit here and my hand will be available and I will hold your hand while we make this call. But unfortunately, you have to be the one that makes it. And that is something across the board that we will do with all of our survivors, even if it means follow up to a doctor's appointment or calling that therapist who they may need to sit down with. We sit with them. We don't do it for them, but we will sit with them and make that call with them.
Could you tell us about that process of when somebody, well, I'm assuming walk-ins are welcome as well?
Yes, we have advocates here 9 to 5, or about 8 to 5 every day. So while we live and die by our calendar, and it's a lot of, chaotic sometimes, and we prefer somebody to call first. We also know that sometimes that phone call, I have anxiety like crazy. I cannot make a phone call, and sometimes it is just better for me to gear up and say, I'm walking in and I'm going to do this. We have people here whenever our building is open who are ready. All of our staff members have been trained on how to handle a crisis and how to get this person to an advocate who will be able to then help them in the next step of whatever it is that they are going through.
Could you describe that advocate, what a victim advocate does and that whole part of the process?
Absolutely. So a victim advocate is a very unique position. Before I started here, I had no freaking idea what it was. So we are someone who will meet a survivor of sexual violence where they're at. We will walk in and provide emotional support and resources for this survivor. And the very awesome part of our job is being able to walk in and say, hey, what happened to you is terrible, and I am so sorry. I want to be here with you and help shoulder this burden of recovery with you along the way. And that is basically what we do. So to put it in a box is really hard. But if we have a survivor who says, I need to figure out a way to get to the prosecutor's office. Well, we're finding a way to get you to the prosecutor's office, whether that be through our township trustee's office or through a cab or some sort of way that we are able to arrange that. So just being able to meet them where they're at and say, hey, I'm here with you. You don't have to go through this alone. And I want to be here every step of the way with you.
So Becca, that seems like it could just be a life-saving thing in itself to know that there's somebody there going to hold your hand the entire way, be by your side, no matter what steps it takes. Or, I mean, that's tremendous. That is so exciting. Well, not exciting, but very nice.
Very nice. I'm going to take that one step further though and ask you how much follow-up you might have with someone who has come to you for services.
Absolutely. So we get clients a couple of different ways. We do have partnerships with all 10 hospitals in our county where if a survivor comes to a hospital to either get an evidence collection, just get a medical check, make sure they are okay, we are called out to the hospitals. So recently, as of July 1st, we have what used to be the Victims' Bill of Rights, which were just rights, but now it is law, that every survivor in the state of Indiana has the right to have a victim advocate present prior to a forensic exam, prior to talking with law enforcement.
Wow.
So we go out to the hospitals and we'll meet with the survivor there. And again, we're all about the empowerment. So we're asking them right away, like, is it okay that I stay? Is it okay? Where do you want me? You know, it's a very, very delicate and intimate exam that needs to be done. So if we receive a client from a hospital, which a lot of the times is how we get our clients, we provide every single client that we get the permission to do so with a 72-hour follow-up call. So this is, 72 hours after that event where, that trauma response may be starting to come down a little bit. We follow up and say, hey, remember me? I'm still here. I'm still available. And let's go over some of the things that we talked about in the hospital, just in case you forgot, because we know that people in trauma cannot always remember everything that is told to them when all of these things are coming into play. From there, it is completely up to our survivor. We do a couple other follow-up calls just to check in, see how things are going. If our survivors want us to go with them to law enforcement, with the detectives and the interviews, we will go with them to that. We're not always allowed into the room just because, again, this is a police investigation and every single detail is super important into a police investigation. Of course, we would want to be in that room, but if we can't, we're at least sitting outside of the door. So that way, as soon as that client comes out of that door and they've just had to rehash all these horrible details, we're right there to be able to help ground them and remind them that they are safe.
Wow, that's great.
That's wonderful.
From there, thank you. From there, we will go with them to prosecutors' appointments, whether we are going with them because the charges are being declined. There may not just be enough evidence for whatever reason. We'll go with them to that. We'll also go with them to the first meet and greet with the prosecutor if charges are filed. And then from there, we work hand in hand with the Lake County Prosecutor's Office to provide the emotional support while they are going through that judicial system. So we go to court with our clients, which as of right now, during a pandemic is very strange because a lot of it's being done in our office and live streamed. But we do that here with them. And we walk all alongside them throughout that entire judicial process until we hear that we're guilty and this case is now done. After that, we do have the emotional support here in the way of individual sessions with our survivors and with support groups as well.
And I think you have a therapist now on staff, or you will be?
We are contracting a therapist as of October 1st through Survive and Thrive Counseling. There's 3 or 4 of the different therapists there who are very specifically trauma therapists. So we are contracting with them and we're building an awesome partnership there. For our survivors who just may need a little bit more support than an advocate can provide them, we have someone right there that we can refer them right on over to. And we've worked out all the ways of the referral process and how that's gonna go so that we can continue to empower our clients and make sure that all of their needs are being met no matter where they're at.
That's great. And I know, so we're talking about partnerships and this stage of the process. I think that's why you reached out to PFLAG and LGBTQ Northwest Indiana, because I think as you were describing it when we were talking with you earlier, handling the trauma and getting them through that trauma piece of their life, but then they might also have this other piece of their life, like you had mentioned, the substance abuse, or maybe they are LGBTQ, or they're wondering about their, sexuality and orientation, that type of thing. So that's where I think we see our groups fitting in with the partnerships. So
absolutely, because and especially I would say within the course of the last few years, we have seen an increase in our LGBTQ peoples coming in through our doors. And there could be a plethora of reasons behind why that is, but we are seeing the need in our agency. And like, I can be a fantastic advocate, but when it comes down to it, I am a sexual assault victim advocate. That is what I know. That is what I do. That is where my very, very specific training comes into place. I don't think that I am the appropriate person to walk through a path of identifying what someone's sexuality may be, or walking through that process. And so being able to have an agency that I can say, hey, you know what? I know these amazing people, and they are going to be able to work with you on the level in which you need, the same way I'm going to be able to work with you on this issue. And together we're going to help build you into the best person and the best version of who you are, with the best recovery under your belt. And that's where those partnerships are so important, because you cannot save the world on your own. You cannot fix the world for every single person on your own. You have to have a community and the resources within that community to help support every single person within. Lake County is a melting pot of people. Northwest Indiana is a melting pot of people. We've got to have these systems in place so that when someone walks in our door with these different issues, I can say, hey, I can help you with this one, and these people can help you with this one. And overall, we're going to be able to come together and help you out 100% of the way.
And I think it's important to mention at this point that about confidentiality. It's not like you're going to call us up and say, hey, we've got person X that needs to come see you, right? I mean, it stops there. Their work with you doesn't get conveyed to us, in other words.
Absolutely. So one of the very unique positions that we as victim advocates have at our Rape Crisis Center is we have privileged communication by the state. So there is an IC code, it's 3735-6, that states that the communication between a victim advocate at a rape crisis center is privileged by law. And the only times that we break that communication and we break that privilege is if somebody tells us they want to kill themselves, they want to kill or hurt someone else, or if we're made aware of child abuse or neglect. In those instances, we are mandated reporters, and we have to report that to local authorities, of course. Obviously, we are in the business of keeping people safe. But the way our referral process works would be either I sit with you and we make this call together, and that person, that survivor, is doing the talking. Or it's just as simple as, let me print out a bunch of resources for you, and when you're in the safety of your home, you can make those calls. But never would I call up an agency without the explicit written permission of a release of information from a survivor and say, hey, I got Susie Q here and she needs some services from you.
Yeah,
I would never do that, and it's against the law for us to do that. So I want to make that perfectly clear.
I wanted that to be clear too.
Well, likewise, it truly isn't any of our business as LGBTQ supportive organizations to have to know about what other things are in their lives. Our focus is dealing with them as LGBTQ community members.
We're allies.
Or allies.
Absolutely. And that's the same thing with us. If you come to us, we're not going to go dig into your personal life and your history of everything else if you come to us with a very specific trauma that you want to work through.
But on any side.
And I would just like to further that point. Yes, there needs to be no judgment. You doing your work as an organization and as a person needs to have no judgment about anything outside of your work. Likewise with us.
Absolutely.
We don't judge anyone who is in the LGBTQ community for any reason.
Or the family members, or the allies.
Absolutely. That's super important to make sure that everyone hears that, because sometimes people will have a very specific idea in mind, and the fear of judgment and the fear of what people are going to say. I think we both, in both organizations, see that, given whichever issue it is that we are working with. And it's so important to say, and without being mean, I don't care about all that mess outside of there. I care about you.
Yeah.
And what I can do to help you as a person.
That's really nicely said.
Very nicely said.
So it seems like there's the support that you're giving just mentally, emotionally, physically by being there throughout this process. And then there's also a legal part of the process. Can you talk a little bit more, like which part of it you need to be a Lake County resident for and which part you don't?
Absolutely. So as of right now, we provide judicial advocacy, so that going to the police interviews, going to the prosecutor's office, going to court, that part of our job is within Lake County. Now, we have talked, and if a client requests me in Porter County, Newton County, Jasper County to go with them, I will fight to the death to make that happen. We do not have the greatest partnerships with those outside of Lake County, just because when we started only a few years ago when we focused really heavily on Lake County. And I do see in the very close future us pushing forward with expanding outside of Lake County. As of right now, though, the best likelihood of me being allowed in one of those meetings is going to happen for our Lake County residents, because we have those partnerships. For supportive services, I don't care where you are. If you're willing to come to us for an in-person session, even if you're traveling 2 hours away, we are here and ready for you. And now, I hate to say this, but COVID and the pandemic has forced us to think outside of the box. And because, from mid-May or mid-March to mid-May, we were all working from home during the safer at home orders. So we were very quickly forced to, how are we going to service our survivors when we're all working from home? And so now we have put, an investment into our technology. We have these fancy laptops that they've provided us. We have the technology to use them through the chat feature that is now implemented on our website, which is fully encrypted and unable to be hacked and all of that. So it's not just through like a Zoom call where we're hearing the horror stories of people, hacking into Zoom. We have a fully encrypted virtual software that we're able to use so that we can get this face-to-face interaction with our clients. We've been doing phone sessions galore and working with our survivors just over the phone, sending them, worksheets and self-help worksheets through the email. We have chat options. So the pandemic has forced us to think outside of the box. And so being able to have a client from Louisiana call us and say, hey, I got your number and I need some help. It's like, hey, we can work with you in Louisiana now because we have all of these awesome options for virtual settings. So our support goes way farther out of just Lake County. Our judicial aspect is really focused in Lake County, but not to say that we wouldn't step out if we needed to.
And you have a exit door on your website, just in case if somebody's looking at it and it becomes a dangerous situation for them where they are. How does that work? Does it just shuts the browser down? Or?
Yeah, it literally just closes the website completely out and brings you to a basic Google page. Okay. Because we do know, especially now when everyone is locked in home and we are trying to be safer at home, not everybody's home is safe. And just looking for information could be a serious issue within that home. So that was something that we have fought for a while, and we finally got it implemented this year. We're so excited about it. And all it is, it's in like I think it's in the top right-hand corner or top left-hand. It's in one of the corners of the screen.
And it's bright red, so you can see it very easily.
It's bright red. All you have to do is click on that and it'll bring you to a Google page very quickly. So that if, you're in home and your abuser walks in, or an unsafe person, it doesn't even have to just be an abuser, but an unsafe person walks in the room while you're looking at our website, you just click that button and it stays on the browser, no matter which page it is that you're looking at. All it does will bring you straight back to Google. So that way that unsafe person won't see what you're looking at.
And I have to say, in the LGBTQ community, maybe not from a physical violence perspective, but certainly from an abusive perspective, many LGBTQ folks also have to be very wary of their online presence and websites they visit for very kinds of, the same reasons.
Yeah, just being on a Zoom support meeting, some people just can't do it because of, where they are.
Right.
So speaking though of coronavirus, we have questions already? Oh,
No, Becca did briefly mention support groups, so I think we need to learn more about those.
Okay.
So as of right now, it is something that we have worked very hard for. We have a support group every day of the week.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So I know we talked a little bit about our support groups, and I forgot to mention during our meeting, so I want to make sure I put it out there. We did launch a new support groups. It's Monday evenings from 3:30 to 5. It's here in office, and it is our young adult support group. So it's aimed for survivors 18 to 25. We put that in place because we had some survivors that were attending our teen group who were a little bit hesitant to jump from the teen group directly into a full-on adult group. And we were like, okay, we see the need, let's make it happen. So that one is very focused on musical and art expression. It's very hands-on with your senses. It's not just sitting in the room and talking. And that just launched last week. So that is on Monday evenings from 3:30 to 5 here in office. On Tuesdays, we host a support group at the Lake County Community Corrections Kimbrough Work Release Program. We are, as of right now, working with the female inmates who are survivors themselves. It's on a pause right now because of, you know, the pandemic that is going on. We have hopes that it'll be launching up again soon. We've been in constant communication with the, you know, the directors over there. And that's held off-site at the Kimbrough Work Release Program.
Okay.
Wednesdays is our closed group. Closed means that we leave it open for 2 weeks and then we close it down to protect the people in that group of people coming in and out. Plus, it is a curriculum group. Fairhaven is a faith-based organization, so that our Wednesday group is usually a curriculum that is got some faith-focused tendencies in it. And then we work through a curriculum with our survivors over the course of 12 to 14 weeks. Like right now, we're working on the Codependence Guide to the 12 Steps. And it's all about codependency and how codependency plays a role in our lives as survivors. And that's Wednesday mornings from 10 to 11:30, and I'm one of the facilitators of that group.
Okay.
On Thursday, we have our teen adolescent survivor support group. This is an open support group for any adolescent aged 12 to 18. And if they are 18 and still in high school, we'll let them go until they graduate high school. We have some awesome facilitators of that group, and they're very hands-on. It's very art-focused, with working with art and different outside of the box ideas of their trauma and giving them and providing them a space to gain their voice back. Fridays is our open support group. That is for any survivor of sexual trauma at any walk in life. It is like a circular group, so you don't have to come to the week before to get the lesson of that day. And that is open to any client who, you know, comes to Fairhaven or wants to come. And that is from 1 to 2:30 on Fridays.
Okay. And none of those are required, right? They're just there for people who want to make use of the different groups.
Absolutely. It is our hope that every survivor will eventually get themselves into a support group, just because sexual violence is something that is taboo. Nobody talks about it. It's a very individualized issue. And building that support with other survivors to say, hey, I may not have walked that same path as you, but I'm walking a similar one, and how about we walk through this path together? And we have seen some beautiful relationships come out of our support groups with our clients who then go get coffee afterwards, or have now other people in their support, that in their little support group in their home, to say, hey, you know what, I'm having a really hard day, so I'm going to text Susie Q because she told me I could text her anytime during support group and I need some support right now.
Knowing that you aren't alone is so important. I mean, we find that with the LGBTQ community, or with a parent who's been blindsided by somebody coming out. You aren't alone, and just to know that is just tremendous. So.
Absolutely.
Has COVID, you mentioned that you've seen a lot of LGBTQ, a lot more LGBTQ people coming through your doors in recent years. Has COVID changed the numbers of people, the types of cases, the number of LGBTQ people, that type of thing?
COVID definitely has had a damper on our numbers. For, you know, a good solid 2 months, for Fairhaven's first time in history, we were unable to respond to hospitals.
Oh, wow.
Which, was detrimental to us as an agency and the core of which we believe in getting there and being with our survivors at the very beginning. So making that decision was a very difficult decision. And then it kind of got out of our hands when the hospitals started locking down on who they were allowing in.
Oh my.
So that one, we were gearing up for our biggest year yet prior to this pandemic. We had, I believe it was 36 call outs within the first 2 months before the pandemic hit. So we were ready. We were gearing up for another busy year. Last year was by far our busiest year with the most clients we've ever served. And we were ready for it. And then the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
So we have seen a drop in our hospital numbers, given that hospitals are still fighting this pandemic on the front lines, and we have to be respectful of the fact that our nurses and our doctors and our hospital staff are just, man, they are some heroes right now, and
Absolutely.
so we definitely have seen a number there drop. We are starting to pick back up. At first it was kind of like making sure our hospitals knew that, hey, we're ready. We're able to come back. Let us come back.
Yeah.
In the office, yeah, we have seen a dip because people are still scared. I mean, it is a pandemic, and we want to think that it's close to being over, but I think we're still smack dab in the middle of it, and people are still scared to come out, and people are scared to come into a place that is public where people are here.
Mm-hmm.
And we have masks available. We take temperatures and have waivers signed as soon as someone comes in. We have hand sanitizer all over the office, and we are constantly cleaning after every single person that comes in our doors. Our staff is wearing masks. We're not requiring our survivors to wear masks specifically because they are a survivor of violence.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be a very big trigger for our survivors. So by no means are we we're saying, hey, if you're comfortable with it, wear it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a requirement, but our staff is wearing masks when we are in more than 2 people in a room and we can't social distance, and very specifically with our clients. So yeah, unfortunately, this pandemic is kicking some butt here in our community. We're seeing a drop in numbers, but we're not stopping our services, and we're constantly thinking of ways that we can reach people where they're at, whether that be in their home, which isn't always safe. So when we were doing the virtual support groups, it was difficult. We saw a decline in our numbers because, yeah, I mean, even if I'm sitting at home and the people in my home are safe individuals, I don't want to dive into my trauma with my mom sitting in the next room.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to dive into the hard week I've been having,
Mm-hmm.
With either I can raise my hand. My depression and anxiety skyrocketed during this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to talk about that.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel like everybody has felt that.
Yeah.
But going into that and talking about those very intimate details of that with a little brother or sister, or even a significant other, who all these people may be safe people, absolutely. But there's a reason people come to support groups.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why people ask for outside help. And not being able to have that safe place to come and share those, it's been rough on our survivors, and
Yeah.
so now, like I said, we're just constantly thinking of, okay, how can we meet this person where they are at and figure out a way to make this happen for them? Because when we were all working from home, that first week our survivors came back, they were like, for the love of God, never do that again. That was terrible.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I have to believe that the number of cases hasn't changed. In my mind, that means the number of cases that you would typically handle hasn't changed. And I just think it's a sad state of affairs that we're in this position now with the coronavirus that is having an effect on your clientele numbers and what you can do. I really feel that's been difficult. Elizabeth and I in our organizations have also been experiencing some of that very same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's heartbreaking to know that times are actually harder
Mm-hmm.
for crisis victims and harder for LGBTQ folks
Mm-hmm.
with the isolation
Oh, gosh,
and
yes.
the limited means of communication and non-acceptance or fear that is prevalent even outside of these times.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're all human, and humans are meant for interaction. They're meant for connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Zoom is awesome and it's fantastic, and FaceTime is great, but it is not the same thing
No.
as being able to go and be with someone. And just that alone is terrifying and terrible and draining on someone's mental health. Then you throw in all of these other horrible, terrible things that could be happening, or confusing times that could be happening. And then it's like, it just becomes too much. It's just too much.
And add on to that the fact that an in-person conversation in a safe space is encrypted by default, whereas any online service you use is questionable.
Absolutely.
And patient confidentiality is, of course, of utmost importance.
Absolutely.
I just had a couple more questions. You think we have time, Amari?
We have 15 minutes.
Okay. So you talked about community partnerships and hospitals and police departments and those types of places, shelters. What about human trafficking, anti-human trafficking?
So my executive director, Kelly Bates, she is a part of the Northwest Indiana Anti-Trafficking Association. I can't remember what the last letter means. And so she and two of my advocates actually attend weekly or it's like not weekly, it's monthly meetings, and are constantly working in the droves of human trafficking, because we know that human trafficking is a beast in and of itself. It is very prevalent in our community, and somebody's got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, my executive director, who is a survivor, thriver, overcomer of sexual violence herself, is diving into the human trafficking or the anti-trafficking movement. And we are waiting to hear about grants and such for our own work as an agency. Everything is so slow moving in the grant world, and then you throw in a pandemic and nobody knows what to do. So fingers crossed that grant comes through. But yes, my executive director and two of my advocates, Michelle and Jenna, are hands-on within the anti-trafficking movement and within the agencies in our community as well.
I think that's one of the topics we want to cover on an upcoming show.
Absolutely.
And then, did you say you did have a VOCA grant, or you were getting, what can you do with that?
We are almost 100% funded by state and federal grants, and the VOCA grant is one of the ones that we get. It is the, I wrote it down. I don't remember, Victims of Crime Act. Which means that it can be, I don't know the ins and outs of grants. I just started working within them within my new position here. And it's working with victims of crime. So it's one of our grants that, we're able to work with victims of crime, not necessarily sexual assault survivors. So if, this person is a survivor of sexual assault, and they also have other things that are going on, because we do know domestic violence and sexual assault, unfortunately, a lot of the times intersect. This grant is one of our most prominent grants of our agency. And it's also the grant in which that we were able to contract the therapist through. So we love our VOCA grant. We love all of our grants because we get a lot of community support. We do our fundraisers, we do our community events, which unfortunately have been put on hold because of this pandemic. But we love our grants, and they're the ones that keep us going, and keep our services available. And I don't think I've mentioned this. Every single service at Fairhaven is 100% free of charge to every single survivor who walks through our doors.
That's tremendous.
So is there a method by which someone could perhaps go to your website and make a donation?
There is a whole tab on our website about donations. We take monetary donations. We take limited clothing donations. I'm worried about saying that. We don't like to, and I know that this sounds really bad, but we don't like to give used clothing to a survivor of sexual violence in a hospital. Oh. Every survivor that we go to, I don't think I've mentioned that either, we all have response bags, and they have brand new clothing for our survivors, because a lot of the times their clothing gets taken in a forensic exam. So we like to provide our survivors with a brand new t-shirt, sweatpants, bra, underwear, socks, boxers. We have male and female bags. We have male and female toiletries, whichever our client wants the most, we will give them. And we also have these awesome blankets that are donated to us. So every survivor gets a brand new blanket. But we are very hesitant. We will not give them a used clothing article because we want to make sure that they are going home and with as much dignity as possible.
Yeah.
So we do, we are always looking for donations for that. And then we are a nonprofit. So, basic office supplies are always awesome, and art supplies and those types of things, as I'm sure you guys know.
So you have volunteers that work with you as well? Because obviously you started as a volunteer.
I do. So we, my staff and we are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But we could not do this without the help of our volunteers. So we have a pretty hefty team of volunteers. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head right now. We actually have another volunteer training on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of this week. But we are going to be putting another one on the books soon, so I can, of course, send that information to you guys as soon as we have it. So we do 3-day trainings. It's a lot of information. They're all day. Your brain hurts afterwards. But we do this because while we prefer college degrees, not everybody has one. So we do the training in-house to show our volunteers exactly what they need to know about sexual assault, exactly what they need to know about basics of the anti-sexual assault violence movement, about rape culture, and how sexual assaults can mess with the neurobiology of your brain, and all of these different things, and how to work with all of these different survivors of different minority communities. And then we tell them how to do their job, how to literally walk into a hospital and work with a survivor who has just had this horrible, terrible thing happen to them. So it takes a few days. We have monthly meetings with our volunteers. Our volunteer coordinator is fantastic at making sure she is constantly checking in with our volunteers. And then any little bit of time that a volunteer can give us on call to help us manage that hefty job is always appreciated. So if you were interested in volunteering and wanted to be hands-on with the survivor, that would be an excellent way. And then we are always looking for volunteers to help with we have another department of prevention and outreach and education, and they're the ones who are out in the community and going to the vendor fairs and going into schools and, prior to the pandemic, they're still working on it now, but going into the schools, providing age-appropriate body safety lessons and talking to kiddos about predatory behaviors and what are some tactics that bad people use to get kids into unsafe situations. And they are that department, man, Shanna and Tammy, they are amazing at what they do. And they are always looking for people to come in and just help them with package of information for our kiddos or our community when we're out in it. And so we have something for everyone here, whether it's just like packing response bags or helping us sort through donations. There's always something here for whoever wants to get involved at whatever capacity of which they want to.
That's great.
Maybe this is the wonderful spot for me to ask you to tell us how we might contact the Crisis Center and actually talk about becoming a volunteer.
Okay, so we have a couple different ways. The first one is, of course, our website. It's fairhavenrcc.org. On that website, you will find a tab for volunteering, which will give you the volunteer coordinator's information. Her name is Natalie. She is awesome. Please reach out to her if you want to volunteer with us at Fairhaven. There on that website, it also gives you our office number, which is answered, during regular office hours of 8 to 5 during Monday through Friday. If you are in immediate crisis or need to talk to an advocate immediately, I ask that you call our crisis line. That is a cell phone that we carry around. It gets answered calls and texts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single day of the year. And that phone number is 219-218-2552. That is the best way to get a hold of an advocate in a very quick way.
Could you repeat that number, please?
Yes, 219-218-2552.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to tell us? We're kind of coming up on time here, but we got a few minutes left. Anything else you want to share?
I would like to have you ensure us once again that LGBTQ folks won't be judged if they need your services.
I make that promise to anyone who is listening, LGBTQ people, anyone else who is possibly listening to this awesome video right now. No matter where you are at in life, no matter what background you come from, no matter what decisions have been made in your life, we will not judge you. You will be met where you are at. The only thing I want to say to anyone who's listening who is a survivor of sexual trauma is that you are not alone. We are here for you. We want to be here for you. None of us got into this because we got into it for a job. Every single person I work with, this is a passion for them. We have dedicated this part of our lives to this job. We want to be here for you. So please call us, text us, send us a chat on the website, however, email me, however it is that you need to reach out, do it. We want to be here for you. You will not be judged. You are not alone. We are here in your corner and want to be. So please contact us any way you need to, but we are here and we're not going anywhere. Pandemic, no pandemic, we're here. And I think that in closing, that's what I would like to say.
Thank you, Becca.
That's great. That's great. Well, we'd like to thank, are we finishing now or do you want to do any news stories or?
I guess I'll bypass the news stories, but I would like to acknowledge that today, no,
Yesterday.
it would be yesterday, that's the 23rd of September, was Celebrate Bisexuality Day, which, depending upon which country you're from, was either in the middle of Bi Awareness Week or at the end of Bi Awareness Week. It seems in the US, the week occurs the week before Celebrate Bisexuality Day, and in other countries, it is the week in which the 23rd of September falls.
So Bisexuality Awareness Day or Visibility Day is always on September 23rd.
From Teen Talk Canada, I'll just read you a very short paragraph. Bisexual Awareness Week celebrates the resiliency of bisexual culture and community. Throughout Bi Week, allies and bi people learn about the history, culture, and community. It includes Bi Visibility Day on September 23rd, 2020. You can go to glad.org, that's GLAAD.org, and find out more information, or of course, Teen Talk Canada and HRC, the Human Rights Commission, and also find some information about that as well as Google search providing a plethora of information about bisexuality.
And Wikipedia, the LGBT portal. And I don't know if you could see it because it's a little camouflage, but we do have a bisexual flag here with the pink, purple, and blue lines.
And as well as identifying as transgender, a transgender woman, I also identify as bisexual.
Do you need to define it for some of our viewers?
I can.
Just briefly.
Okay. A bisexual person is someone who can be attracted to more than one gender, but sometimes describe themselves differently. The definition proposed by longtime bisexual leader, national speaker, and award-winning activist Robin Oakes is, I call myself bisexual because I acknowledge that I have in myself the potential to be attracted romantically and or sexually to people of more than one sex and or gender, not necessarily at the same time, not necessarily in the same way, and not necessarily to the same degree.
All right. So I guess we'd like to thank the Bill and Kelly Show for producing our TV episodes here.
And as we always end our show, remember, The conversation with a mental health provider is only a phone call away, and that there are many resources, including the Trevor Project for suicide help. And I'm going to try to get this right. The National Suicide Prevention Hotlines number is 1-800-273 8825, I think. I'm sorry if I get that wrong. That's not helpful. I don't have it. I don't have my sheet. Do you have your colorful sheet?
No, I don't have it with me.
If not,
The
the
bill is
Trevor
showing
Project, a Google search.
Bill is showing it right now.
Bill is showing it right now.
Yep.
Wonderful.
And we'd also like to thank the Bill and Kelly Show sponsors as well. We would love sponsors for this show as well on the Bill and Kelly Show. So if you are interested in sponsoring to any degree, please let either us or Bill and Kelly Show know. We really, really appreciate it.
We can find Fairhaven at what website, Rebecca?
It's fairhavenrcc.org.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had that National Suicide Prevention number not quite right. It is 800-273-8255. If you need it, please call it 800-273-8255.
So thank you very much, Becca. It was a delight talking to you and so exciting to hear about the great services and attitudes. And oh my gosh, the passion just shown through. So thank you so much. It was a
Thank you
joy having you here.
I'm so thrilled and appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Fairhaven is also listed as a resource on my website. That's lgbtq-nwi.org. And as an LGBTQ community member or an ally, Elizabeth can be contacted at her website, pflagcp-nwi.org. And we would love to thank our viewers and watchers for taking a look at our program, and we hope that you have enjoyed it.
This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by Sip Coffee House 2 in Highland, Indiana on Jewett Avenue. Great coffee, lattes, smoothies, and more. Food and treats you will adore. Small town charm with big city selection. It's Sip Coffee House 2. If it's breakfast, brunch, or lunch you need, Les Cafe is the place to go, indeed. Open 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. 7 days a week. Les Cafe Pancake House, located in Highland, Indiana on Highway Avenue. Les Cafe, where less is more. Promise You Art House, a fun and vibrant place for local artisans to display and sell their creative works, owned and operated by artists for artists. Conveniently located at 8830 Kennedy Avenue in Highland, Indiana. For hours and events, visit pyarthouse.com or follow them on Facebook. Promise You Art House, where creativity reigns.